unfolding story. And so if you're around Missio, if you're a part of this, if there's something that we want to see shape your discipleship for you as a person, if you're in a family, for you as a family, if you're in a dating relationship, for your dating relationship, if you exist on a sports team, that would have effects in your sports team. If you're in a dormitory, that would affect your dorm. It affects your classroom. It affects your vocation. It affects your neighborhood. It affects the way you look at the world, your finances, your sexuality. It's the way that you look at absolutely everything. It's that God, in His Word, is not giving a list of rules to follow, commands to obey, or trivial little sayings that you might want to put on the back of a coffee mug, but He's giving us the true story of the whole world. That our Bible gives us not just some religious opinions that you could choose if you want to. It never claims to do that. But we believe that the Bible gives us God's unfolding story, and that changes absolutely everything. That we want to see men, women, and children be able to more and more see their lives as part of God's story instead of just living their lives and hoping that they could take some stuff about Jesus and kind of jam it into their life. That we believe that God has a way for us to be truly alive human beings, and that we're invited to live that life out now, and it will one day come in full. And that we can, and here's the thing, I just want to say, the warning that I can give us is that we can be around Missio, and we can know the symbols. We could have them tattooed on our skin. We could wear t-shirts, hoodies. We could have bracelets. We could have hats. We could have whatever you want that have the true story symbols on it, and catch this and still fail to live out our role in that story because some other story actually directs our lives. The story of consumerism, where what we have and what we take in is what really defines us. Or the story of humanism, that human beings are what will rescue the world at the end of the day. And so we're given very little to prayer because we believe that we have what it takes to make it all work. Or there's a bunch of other ways that we can approach this, right? They're the reason that some people look at their finances as what holds their entire security, and other people are able to look at finances as a resource to give away to bless others. It's the reason some people see themselves completely defined by the car that they drive, and other people are completely content to not drive something very nice at all. It's the reason that some people will go in debt for some things and other people save. There's a story that lays behind all this. What we're willing to give our lives to, how we wrestle through evil in this world, how we deal with injustice, when we choose to forgive or not to forgive. We're meaning-making creatures. And we always want to take our events in our life and put them in some greater story. Whether we know it or not, we're always doing that. And so as followers of Jesus, as we want to see people being formed by God together for the sake of others, who live out new identities with new practices in a way that it welcomes others to experience the healing and freeing and forgiving power of Jesus, it needs to be based in something. And so for the last 18 years, Missio Dei Communities has set out to say, what does it look like if we can root ourselves and our friends securely in the story of God and see what fruit comes out of that? We've been blessed to see that fruit literally growing throughout the world. And we also have reminders that we can believe that for a season and walk away from it. The reminder for today that I want to have us is to look at it afresh and say, man, is my life currently taking up its role in God's story? Not has it ever, or not can I remember a season when, but right now, are the decisions I'm making as I look around my week, are they actually informed by God and His story? The fears that I have, the hopes that I have, where I find my significance or my security, is it coming through what I know to be in line with God and His story, or is it something else? We're going to get into exactly what that story is.
So in light of all of the things that Kevin just shared honestly, all of us together, as we're sharing, what are the essentials to a Missio Dei communities? Things like Fruits of Root, that was the one that I was going to say. So I was like, I'm glad somebody called that one out, because that's OG. But one of the things that obviously what Kevin was talking about is essential for us is not just the Bible. I want you to catch that, right? Do we believe the Bible? 100%. Do we believe it to be true? 100%. But it's not just the Bible for the Bible's sake, right? But we believe at Missio Dei that the Bible tells not just a story of the world, but the true story of God and the world. And like every story has a beginning. And in our story, we believe that God created the heavens and the earth, right? In 7 days, that everything that he created, it was good, right, and beautiful. So he was like, let there be light, and it was lit, right? Let there be land. I bet you never heard the story told like that before, but it's in there. Let there be light, and then there was light. Land, boom. Humans, boom. Sparkling water, and there it was. Yeah, we had to get that one back. I wasn't about to let that one slide. That was crazy. But we believe that the earth and the heavens and all the things that we get to actually delight in the story wasn't just some freak accident. We actually believe that it was divinely designed by a good, intentional, creative God. And so he creates the entire world in 6 days, and then he rests, and then he creates humans in his image. Right? From the dust, he forms Adam and Eve. They're naked, and they feel no shame. And in the garden, they're walking with God in the cool of the day. And it's here we see that there's an intimacy with God. Right? There's a proximity with God and his creation. And it's right here that heaven and earth overlap. And it's always the way that it was intended to be. Covenants are formed. Relationships are formed. Humans were meant to enjoy truth, blessing, trust, right? To cultivate the creation, to enjoy God's character, and to walk. And so we love this. God walks with humanity. And so wouldn't it be nice if that was the end of the story, right? Hey, this is the story we believe. Let's go to the table. But unfortunately, because of the world that we live in today, the question becomes, what happened? If that's how it started, how did we get here? You see, and when God created everything, good, right, and beautiful, part of what he did to keep it good, right, and beautiful was he gave humans dominion. He said, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. He gave them assignments. He gave them roles. He gave them purpose. But he also gave them boundaries. He said, you can eat from any tree that you want, except for this one, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And of course, in this moment, we move to the second act of the story, rebellion, Adam and Eve. They eat from the tree. And this is huge because this is just not some kind of colossal mistake. Not like, my bad, I won't do it again. It's right here in this moment that relationship that they had in the garden was fractured. That relationships were broken and country music was invented. I'm just saying. I'm not trying to start trouble, but when I said that in Phoenix, they were like, amen, that's good. So I'm just letting you know. And the Spirit fell on them in that moment. But man, the earth, everything in that moment fractured, it snaps. So when there was once intimacy with God, communion with God and each other in creation, now there's hiding. Now there's blame. Now there's sin. And there's death. And it's in this moment. It's so much bigger than just making one bad decision. It was in this moment that humans, Adam and Eve, they chose to reject God as the true king. Ultimately choosing their way over God's way. And here's the reality. All of us, to some degree, repeat the same story. We're all tempted in our own ways to choose our own way over King Jesus' way. And in that moment, that there's a deeper issue for us, and we reject God as his rightful king. But thankfully, the story doesn't end here. Because immediately after humanity rebels, God makes a promise. Right? That one day, evil will one day be defeated. And then the rest of this story, God begins to reclaim his kingdom through a family that will bless the nations. It's through Abraham's family where God forms Israel. He gives them covenants, and he dwells among them in the tabernacle, again in the temple. And Israel is called to live as priests that reflect God's character and participate in the mission to the nations. But it's also in this part of the story that we see something crucial, that the entire act of the third story declares this message that even when we are unfaithful, God continues to remain faithful time and time again. And it's here that we see prophets, right? The Old Testament is meant to point to something better, someone better, a better king, a better covenant, a better rescue. And the Old Testament ultimately leaves people in waiting. Which begs the question, how will God bring restoration? Will we ever see this promised Messiah? Will we ever be delivered? And then in that moment, 400 years of silence. And after that period of silence, Jesus steps onto the scene. And he's announcing good news. But he's not just announcing good news, right? He's embodying good news. He's demonstrating good news. Wherever Jesus went, blind people can have their sight. Sick people were healed. Sinners were forgiven. And the outcasts were welcomed in. He lives a perfect life. He dies on a cross, and he lives in a perfect life. And here's the thing. He's crucified for it. He doesn't just die on a cross. He was crucified on a cross. People put him there, that the world around him, because the kingdom was breaking in, there was people in opposition. And so in that opposition, they crucified Jesus. And Jesus lives a perfect life. He dies, and then he resurrects from the grave, right? He bears our sin. He takes our rebellion upon ourselves, right? And it's this moment right here where a new kind of covenant was inaugurated through his blood. You see, the resurrection of Jesus isn't just proof that Jesus is alive. It's an announcement that God's new creation has begun. It's through Jesus that the relationship that was broken in Eden is restored. And the way back to God's presence has been opened. And I want to just put a pin in this for a minute, because one of the things that I've started to kind of see as I'm having conversations around the tap room that I work at, when I kind of get the opportunity to share the story, is a lot of people know the story when they think about the Bible, and they know it like up to this point. Right? They're like, yeah, I know Jesus, he lived, he died, he rose again. And a lot of people think that this is where the story ends. But one thing that we know is that the story continues from this moment. Jesus lives, he dies, and then he ascends and commissions his people to go and make disciples. And he sends the Spirit with them. And it's right here that there's a new kind of people that are formed called the church. God's family, ambassadors, his living temple, formed by grace and empowered by the Spirit. The church joins with God to bear witness to the coming King. And the good news is that this is the part of the story that we actively find ourselves in today. Which means that if this is true, if this is what we believe about God and the world, it begs for us to ask the question, if this is true, what is God doing today? And what's my role in that? What is the Spirit up to in my neighborhoods? What is the Spirit up to in my places of work? What is the Spirit up to at my school? What is God doing in these places? And what is he inviting me to take part in with him? How can I continue the mission of Jesus? How can I announce that King Jesus reigns? And the church isn't just waiting around. We have a part to play in God's restoration now. Until one day, the final act of the story commences. In the final act of the story, it ends where it began. Not in a garden, but in a renewed heaven and earth, where everything that was broken by sin is made new. Death is gone. Tears are wiped away. Covenant reaches its fullest potential in this moment. We will be his people, and he will be our God. And God's presence fills that new creation, and nothing separates God from humans who give their allegiance to him. Humanity reigns over a new creation, fulfilling the vocation given in Genesis, and enjoy eternal flourishing. Friends, that's where the story is leading us. Not escape, but renewal. Not abandonment, but restoration. And so in light of all this, where does this leave us today? Because the question isn't, do you know the story? Right? If we said, hey, we're going to actually flip this, we're going to go around and share the story. I know all of you guys would be able to tell the story in a version. The question isn't, do you know the story? The question is, are you living into it? Are you living into your role in the story of God? Because here's what is true. All of us are living for some sort of story. Right? The life that we live is the story that we write to the world, and the words to that story matter. And there is this invitation that Jesus is giving us to leave behind the false stories that we're so tempted to believe and to write for ourselves, and to step into the true story that God's been writing from the very beginning. It's a story of a creator pursuing his creation, a savior redeeming his people, and a spirit empowering his church, and a God who makes all things new.